There.
Hey Amy, how are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
Let me try and fix my audio here. Let's see. How you doing today? I think it's working now.
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good.
I was excited for the debate,
Oh, I
but
know.
I understand they're having issues, but that's okay. We can still have a fun conversation.
Sure, yeah, why not?
And so yeah, I actually wrote something because I wanted to just get a basic premise for tonight.
Okay.
And so I guess I can just do my little opener, and then you can have, if you want, an opener, and then, or we can just go into conversation.
Okay. Are we live now on the stream?
We are live
We are
now.
live now. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Amy.
All right. So tonight was going to be an after show for debate on Is There Evidence for a God of Matt Dillahunty versus, I believe, a man named Stewart. Since the debate was postponed, I thought it would be a good time to talk about the topic and why there doesn't seem to be any good reason for a deity to exist. And I find this can be a hard subject for theists who want to get as far away from their specific deities as possible. Which makes sense, because in a world increasingly defined by science and technology, room for a god to be hiding in some small crevice behind a rock diminishes. Thus, the path of argument normally starts with Jesus, but if they talk to a skeptic long enough, it's funny how much the conversation begins to switch to, can we really know anything at all? I mean, do we even know if we're just brains and vats? Which is the kind of arguments we get from snake oil salesmen. Nowhere at any time in a debate on God has any theist given evidence that could pass empirical testing. Instead, we're left with texts from thousands of years ago with prophets doing the equivalent of magic tricks. Moses parting the Red Sea, Jesus coming back from the dead, and Muhammad riding over the moon on a horse. Sweet, that's a 3-act show. Even includes a pony. You would think a deity or the creator of the universe would have an easier time communicating with his creations. Turning water into wine and conjuring zombies is neat, but what I really seek in a personal relationship is the person to be real. He seemed to love showing up thousands of years ago, but unless we can go on a date together, I'm going to have to turn the possibility of a God down. Instead, this nebulous, floating consciousness seems to be a plot device created by humans who are still trying to figure the world out. I'm sure the world's holy books, if carefully mined, could have nuggets of metaphorical truth in them. However, the same could be said of any other book, including The Lord of the Rings, which I think has more wisdom than all of the world's religions combined. If we've made it this far, most theists will start to make deistic arguments like the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of a God, which is a great public relations name because, to no one's surprise, it's not an argument for the existence of a God, but special pleading fallacy for a being to ignore causality. So are there any good reasons for a God to exist? Simple answer, no. But hey, if they want to change our mind, the lab is always open. Thank you.
Well, that was a nice little opening presentation there, Amy. Yeah, you got a lot of good points in that.
Thank you. I was gonna say, I don't know. It seems like. Did you want to have your own? Did you want to have an opening?
Well, I'll just mention a few things that you brought up, and well, we've got Mr. Batman on Modern Day Debate tomorrow, so we'll see a lot of
Oh,
that. How do you know anything? How do you know any? Basically, the 1 + 1 = 2 equals Jesus fallacy. That if you can know that 1 + 1 = 2, therefore his God must be the cause of that. It's a
yeah. It all makes sense. Why didn't I think of that?
incredible leap of logic there, but yeah. Um, Yeah, I've been wasting some time on Brett Keene's channel. You familiar with who Brett Keene is?
I think I've heard of him before.
He used to be on back in the day. He used to be on Amazing Atheist streams back when he was, a thing that people actually paid attention to, maybe 2010, 2011. But
Okay, I remember the Amazing Atheist.
yeah, Brett Keene, he used to be he maybe a month ago he was riding with Smokey Saint, and then they had kind of a public breakup. Smokey, they don't like each other anymore. But anyway, Brett Keane is now he's a maltheist. He thinks that, oh, there's a God out there, but he's a bad God. He's an evil God. By reading different things in the Bible and not going along with the rescuing devices and the things that most Christians use to justify the acts of God. Of course, Brett Keane says no, he's just a dick. He just likes to fuck with people, which makes sense. But he doesn't. He still does hasn't established that he likely exists. So he put out a video today, which was an argument stew that consisted of basically two arguments. God of the gaps, that there are things that we don't know, there are things we don't understand. We don't understand the singularity. We don't understand what caused something before causality. We don't understand all that yet. That's true. And then the argument from incredulity that, well, there are these things and I can't fathom an explanation for these without there being a God, which is the argument from incredulity. Well, that it could be a naturalistic explanation, but I don't think there will be. So therefore, I'm going to assume that it happens to be this genie that farts out universes in life, and that's what I'm going to go with. There's no justification for
Yes.
that, not mind you. Um, we don't understand the singularity, but we've talked before. There could be a myriad of possible explanations for the start of the universe. We just don't know yet. But his
Exactly.
his his hypothesis of the Abrahamic deity, this genie that just creates universes, is probably among the least likely explanations. And considering every explanation we found so far to be true has always been 100% of the time naturalistic. There's never been an explanation where we needed a God. And that's why where you said that we have chased God out of we've chased him out of almost anything. We've explained how basically almost everything works and none of it needs a God. We just don't understand two things: the origin of life, origin of the universe. And these are the hardest problems we face because they're events that only happened one time billions of years ago. Kind of hard to study. So we're doing our best with that, okay? But no, we don't know yet. But that doesn't mean you get to just invent any batshit crazy explanation, and we have to consider that plausible. It's not plausible. It's just as loony as any of the other explanations. And like you said, um, the other day I watched a debate with Kent Hovind, a classic debate from the
Oh
90s, and he
boy.
was debating the flood. And I believe the guy he was debating is a former preacher, actually. But the one I saw got cut out. I haven't seen this debate in like probably at least 5 or 6 years, but it was a good one. I remember it, and it's at a church, and the guy he's debating, and he kind of skewers the crowd in this debate. He's like, I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, oh well, it's no big deal if we can't figure out how to build ships that big and how to care for all those animals and all the water and the cleaning. And It's no problem for me how that could have happened, because God could do it.
That was good.
Because you could just invoke magic at any time you needed a explanation. The people in the crowd were like, "Amen, yes, absolutely, yes, God, magic." And
That
there
is
was
the
at
most
one point
annoying
in
thing.
there, and he's like, then he's like, "So Ken Hovind says he can't prove it, but we'll just have to go with the Bible." And the crowd jumps up like, "Yes, amen, go with the Bible." He's like, "So if I stood here as an Islamic mullah and said I can't prove that Muhammad flew over the moon in a donkey, but we're just going to have to go with the Quran because that's what it says." Or if I stood there as a Hindu and said, "Well, I can't prove any of this about Shiva or Kali, but we're just going to have to go with the Vedas because that's what it says." And you would all look at that and say, "No, that's a stupid line of logic. Why would we do that just because an old book says?" It's funny that we can look at these other myths, these other fables, and we clearly identify them for what they are. They're fables. We don't really, you know,
They
Christians
hate that
today, they
word, but
reject the
yeah.
Quran, you know, almost with a hand wave. They don't spend time researching it. They just hand wave it away. It's bullshit. It doesn't make sense. But they insist that their book is different. Their book is the one that got it right, right?
Well, if you want to know what's wrong with Judaism, ask a Muslim. If you want to know what's wrong with Christianity, ask a Jew, and around it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we have no problem looking at these other religions and saying, that's bullshit. That doesn't make sense. What are the odds of that happening? But their own religion, well, that's different. That's actually true, even though we have the same evidence for it as all the other religions, which is old book says so.
But James, our God is special. You don't
Well,
understand.
he's special because he actually exists, right?
Exactly. They have the right one. You have to understand. They got
And,
it out of all of them.
and they get so triggered with the oh, they hate the thing that, oh, we only go one God further than you. That always makes them mad, because it's true. They're
But it's
atheistic
true.
about all the other gods out there. They just have their one special God that they think defies all the other ones, and he's actually real. We know the other ones aren't real, but he actually is real.
And they really do look down on other miracle claims. Like you can hear them make fun of, especially in debate and discussion when it's like a Christian versus a Muslim. They'll be like, "Come on, dude, did he really resurrect?" You'll have like a Muslim saying this, like, "Does he really resurrect?" And it's just funny because they so easily accept their own miracle claim as just like second thought, and yet somehow it is just as obvious that they are defying biological reality in every other prophet that comes along. They seem to have that skepticism towards.
Yeah, it's really illustrative of what we're dealing with here. And that's why I've said before, when I became convinced that Christianity wasn't true, I didn't sit around and say, "Oh my gosh, there's these problems with the biogenesis. We don't know exactly how it happened." So
Uh,
I just have to, it can't be the Christian God, but it must be another God. So let me just start and
exactly.
look at all the other possible religions out there, and let me find which one of them is the good explanation. You don't do that because you've already dismissed those other claims. You've already hand wave those away because they have no evidence for them either. So when you realize that Christianity, or if you're a Muslim, when you realize Islam has no evidence, or if you're a Hindu and you realize there's no good evidence for Hinduism, you don't have to evaluate the other ones because it's the same evidence for all of them. It's not good
Exactly.
evidence.
Well, it always seems to be the hardest is just shedding the one that we were raised in. Another point that they also hate because it's always, no, I don't have, it's not the same Christianity as my dad. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, yeah,
So,
like take guys like in our debate with Smokey Saint and Maddox. Now they really believe this stuff. I think they're very sincere people. But
oh, yeah, I
if
agree
they
there.
if they had, I told Maddox this, if you had been born in Iran, you'd probably make a lot of the same arguments that you make now, but you'd be making them for Allah.
Yes, well, they would still be making the Kalam argument that then they would be changing which miracle. Yeah, exactly. They'd be tweaking.
So they'd be saying, "Oh, come on! How can Jesus be God and be the Son of God? That doesn't make any sense."
And it's funny, they rarely bring up. I'm surprised how often um, they don't bring up the moon claim. It really seems to be a linchpin for Christianity, even though that's kind of the whole proving that Muhammad is a prophet. Because the other miracles that they bring up are lame. Like they'll be like, well, how could it have been a perfect Quran? He wasn't able to write, yet he made people write his book. It's like yeah, he had people write the book. Like, how is this a miracle?
You mean Jesus? Because other people wrote the gospel.
Well, I feel bad. I was switching back and forth, so I was criticizing the Muslim for what they. The Muslim was criticizing the Christian accurately, and then I was criticizing the Quran. So I was doing both.
Well, I mean, what would you expect someone who's a god to do? So you've got Jesus. If you were a god, what would you expect somebody who's God to do? You'd expect them to do whatever they want. You'd expect them to do all kinds of crazy things just because they could, you know. And if Jesus decided he didn't want to write anything, well, he didn't want to write anything. That's tough. You just have to deal with other people around him that did write it down, you know.
Well, the other thing that really gets me with the Jesus story, and this has been really bothering me the past year because I've been really thinking about this, is that if you're a preacher, your whole shtick is to go around preaching. You're resurrected from the dead. What is the next thing that you do? I would assume go around preaching, but apparently the body disappeared, and we can't show the body because that would be proof of him being really, really dead. And so all of a sudden he magically goes to heaven, and it's like, why torture him? Why the whole play then?
Well, yeah, you're expecting it to try to make sense, which is not a requirement. You know, it doesn't have to make sense. It just, you know, obviously, that's not how actual events would have happened. It wouldn't have happened that way. But then Smokey or somebody like that would come out and say, "Well, just because you would do it differently, how do you know?"
It just from, and I guess this is just the, yeah, they always say, who are you? Who are you to judge? But we are literally that we know of the only thing that can judge things, which is agents. Like their agent, they're trying to prove. We are the actual agents that make judgments.
Well, how can you judge God
I
for
know.
sending Joseph Stalin when you have to ask yourself, why didn't God send 1,000,000 Joseph Stalins? Why didn't he have Stalins on every street corner killing people that looked at him the wrong way? So there you go. You
That's
know,
a new one.
we should
That
be happy that he only sent one, not he could send an infinite number of Stalins or Pol Pots or Mao Zedong.
Yeah, the whole life could get worse. That's a new apologetic one for me, and that really makes no sense. That is an abusive relationship, that right there. I think I've said this before. That is, I know I beat you, but I could really kill you, couldn't I, sweetie? So why don't you shut the fuck up? That's really what that is.
Yeah, that's like the kidnapper who kidnaps the girl and says, like, yeah, I know I rape you, and if you talk back to me, I beat you around a little bit, but hey, I am bringing you food. I'm not starving you to death, because if I were starving you to death, I wouldn't be able to rape you. So there you go,
Exactly.
right?
Things could be worse, right? So, yeah, and to me, it really does look like, because most plants and fungi don't deal with good and evil. This seems to be a thing that intelligent agents deal with.
Well, you know me, I don't believe I go far enough. I don't even believe in true objective morality at all. So I sidestep all
Yeah.
that.
Well,
I
I
mean,
would go.
you
I can
believe it's a
understand that.
biological construct.
I'm a weird middle. I would say it's grounded in biology, but because, we're meaty chemicals, it makes some things complicated. It means that there are something that in almost no situations is it good to go randomly cutting someone's head off, but then when someone is in so much pain that killing them actually becomes the kinder thing to do and they're requesting it, then it changes. But both of those situations are based on the biological situation.
Yeah, I understand where you're going. Like S.J. Thomason, you know who that
I
is, right?
do well.
She's a Christian debater. She's pretty intelligent, but she was making a moral argument one time, and she's like, well, like look at what they do have in North Korea. So they've got these camps there, and these concentration camps, and they put people there, and if you say something against the government, then they might just take your whole family and put them there. They might keep them there for generations. There's not enough food to eat. The conditions are terrible. They overwork them. The death rate is high. It's like, so just about everybody can look at that and say that that's a horrible system. So there has to be something objective about this morality. But the thing is that you're missing of all that is that, well, I mean, apparently the North Koreans don't think it's a bad system. And not that I'm saying their morality is a paragon of virtue or something that we need to look up to, but they're people just the same as us, and they probably don't think that they're evil. So they probably think that there's a justification for why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not saying I agree with it or that I would implement a certain system, but that's just
Well,
me having a
yeah.
disagreement with them. But there's no objective way to say that they're wrong and I'm right, even though I would say that what they're doing is obviously wrong.
See, I'd say North Korea is a weird situation in that they have created a country around a cult of personality, and what they have done is they've isolated the country from information. And so I bet a lot of them don't even know how bad it is, because when you have no other metric, this is all there is. And so I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to know how much of the horror stories are true. I've heard some really bad ones. Is it American propaganda or is it true? If they're 100% true, then it is 1984 in there. If it is, if it's a mix, then maybe, it's just that it's shitty. I am tired of that system, though. It feels like a monarch. I'm tired. I mean, they have basically a blood system back again, where they're just going to keep on passing things down, king and queen through family members.
I mean, at some point, it is what it is. I mean, they're basically a puppet state from communist
China,
China.
yeah.
At any time, if China decides to stop supporting them, that they'll collapse. But it's a complex situation. But that being said, they still are a sovereign nation at this time. So uh, I don't know what. Obviously, I wouldn't advocate their form of government being over here. The claims about the camps, obviously, I mean, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. They're probably not very pleasant places to be. There probably are bad things that go on. There are probably atrocities, but maybe we do know that in the realm of politics, uh, claims of atrocities can get hyperbolized. You remember the claims before the Iraq War, the first war in 1991 or 92, where the people were saying that the Iraqis were going into the hospitals and killing all the babies and everything. It turns out that really didn't happen, but they were trying to drum up support for a war. So you kind of say some of the things like that when you really want to have a war.
Yeah. And just I hate to change the subject, just to
No, go ahead.
go, because I'm gonna use my first thing, woohoo! Because I think this is a good point. This is in debates on is there a God. Theists always bring up the need for objective morality as somehow being a proof of God. To me, this is nonsense. I agree, And not only do I disagree with their premise, I always find that I think this is using the term ironic correctly. I almost find that their morality is always a might makes right mentality. It is why is it why is it wrong to do something? Because God said so. Why? Well, because if you don't do it, then he's gonna burn you the fuck forever. If you don't believe in me, he's gonna burn you the fuck forever.
That is what it boils down to at the end of might makes right. And even in our debate, Maddox kind of said that, like, look, it doesn't matter if you can't wrap your head around it, if you can't accept it, but he's still God. He can still do all these things, even if you don't agree with him.
Yeah, I don't understand how
But
that's
it does
objective.
boil down to might makes right. Well, I think they would say that, well, God probably has reasons for what he does. And even if we can't understand it, we just have to trust him that he's got our best interests in mind. And, they just create this unfalsifiable thing that he's right no matter what. So even if he looks wrong, he's still right anyway. So,
And doesn't that sound cultish? You just gotta understand him, man. You just gotta I know it sounds like we're actually going around trying to kill people, but gotta understand the bigger purpose.
and I mean, even now they've gone through the Bible and they've said, "Oh well, the people that God ordered to be massacred, they were bad people and they were doing bad things. So therefore, God was justified in that." And the because they allowed homosexuality, so therefore, the people had sexually transmitted diseases, and the only ones that wouldn't have that would be the young girls who had never had sex before. So therefore, they would be clean and pure, so you can go ahead and keep them for yourselves. Just kill everybody else.
Yeah. Morality.
Believe
And
first, ask questions later.
it's one of those, James, the Canaanites kind of had it coming. You
I
know,
mean, I guess they kind of did, right? I mean, they probably did some bad things.
it's just amazing how this god always likes to wipe out tribes and then wipe out the planet. And his excuse always seems to be like, yeah, they're doing shitty shit.
But you want to know the worst thing that the Canaanites probably did? What really got God so ticked off at them is they probably didn't mutilate their children's genitals. So I mean that triggers God a lot. He gets really pissed off when he sees them not, mutilating their genitals. He's got to go in and kill them.
Is that an offering? Like, I really don't even fully understand the reasoning behind circumcision. Like, is this an offer? Does this please God? Like, this is one of the things that God is like, oh yeah.
I don't want my people to have penises that look like elephant trunks. That's just disgusting. Cut that piece of skin off.
He likes the smell of blood. He likes all sorts of weird things. Like, he likes calling himself jealous. He likes the smell of blood.
He likes impersonating volcanoes and impersonating Canaanite deities from time to time. El Shaddai one day, then he's Yahweh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before I came on here, I was on Smokey Saint stream. He was having he's pissed off at the Raging Atheist. They have a little feud going on. After the rage, did you see I sent the video of what Smokey actually looks like?
You said that you found out, but I didn't see. Didn't you said he looked like an average guy or something?
Yeah, he's just a regular looking dude. The rage says it looks like his mom had sex with Ali G.
I do like Ali G. And
he looks like Sacha Baron Cohen a little bit. And then Smokey made a video criticizing the Rage's baby mama, his mom's daughter, and then the Rage got kind of pissed off at that. So Smokey was having a haha, I triggered you stream.
They're easy to trigger, and like you were saying earlier, it'll just keep on fractaling because they can't be in groups long enough because it just takes a single argument to create schism because it's not just they're not just arguing about what they believe. This is what God believes.
Yeah, this is your eternity. This is where you're going to spend eternity, Amy. I
Uh,
mean, do you want to spend that your eternity burning, or
I'd
do you
much
want
rather
to
be.
do you want to spend your eternity sitting down, looking up at God, telling him how great he is?
I know.
So you could
Hand
spit.
jobs for God for eternity.
I mean, I would like nothing more than to just sit there and say, God, you're so great. God, I love you. You're a really great God. God, heaven looks so good. God, you did such a good job with this. You are a really good God. I love you, God. You're the best God ever. Doesn't that sound fun, Amy?
Yeah, I've asked for specifics on heaven before, and they're never. It's always as purposely as vague as possible. Like the activities list is very short.
Well, I mean, God said the angels, the seraphim, they perpetually their existence is just going around, floating around God, saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts," and that's basically all they do forever.
I know, same phrase,
Well,
and you get to forget that all of your friends and family members are burning in hell.
well, I mean, you'll basically be like a zombie by then, so you won't really care about that. God will tell you it
I,
was the right thing to do, so you'll just say, "Oh, well, if He said it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do, right?"
exactly.
And
Might rankes right. Remember.
or if you take maybe a more softer approach and you're an annihilationist, then you just think that after
That's
a while, God will allow the fire to consume them and they'll just disappear from the universe. If you want to be a little kinder than, the strict interpretation of the Bible.
yes, that's what Smokey was trying to say, right? Annihilationist. I mean, I agree with annihilation theory. I just think that happens to all of us.
Yeah, we all disappear into nothing. There's no reason to think that we don't, but um, we have no evidence for an afterlife of any kind. So
And actually, I think that's where all of this stuff, not all of it, but a giant majority of this stems from is fear of death. Is just all of this is just about getting, like, I don't want to say a golden ticket, maybe an extra ticket, because it's pretty cool that we even get life, but the extra golden ticket.
uh, yeah, it's that people haven't come to terms with their own mortality. They haven't, you know, and life can be so shitty that life in this world for a lot of people is really fucked up. It's really shitty, and it's the idea that that doesn't matter because after this life, it won't be shitty anymore. It'll be good and it'll be happy and no suffering. Everybody will be on Valium 24/7. You'll all be happy.
And a common complaint I get about us expressing this view is that, well, Amy, James, under your sky, Hitler gets no punishment. He get nothing at all. And it's like, yeah, but we first of all, we can use this to learn from. We can use these experiences to build a better society, and B, there's going to be hard truths. There's going to be bad people who do bad things that get away with them, and that is accepting that once again, just like death, is another hard fact of life.
I mean, that's reality, though. If there's no punishment after death, then yes, then he would get away with it. That's true. I mean, that's just how reality works. There's no cosmic sense of justice, so we don't see that potential injustice and then invent some remedy for it that we have no reason to think is true.
Exactly. And it also allows us to find justice if we can in this life. It means we shouldn't bank on the fact that something's going to happen and we just wash our hands from the entire problem.
I mean, we it's the same thing. Like even if we have somebody who commits one murder and you execute that person. But what if you have somebody who commits 10 murders? You can't execute somebody 10 times, so they would actually be getting away with the last 9 murders, right? I mean, there's no, you can't kill them more than one time, or you can't do anything greater to that person, which is kind of why in the past they came up with more torturous ways of executing people who had committed worse crimes. But we would today would say that that would be unacceptable. We wouldn't want anybody to be tortured to death. But be that as it may, there's still no real justice there.
Yes, and we can't make, as funny as it may, you can't make a game show out of killing people.
You can't. Hey, some people will get away with certain things, and they're just like there's going to be good people who do nothing wrong, and life takes a shit on them. That's just how it is.
But there's still a lot we can do. We can have both. Well, and a lot of other atheists will bring this up. We more so try to find mercy than we try to find justice. But for either of those two qualities, you have to do it in this lifetime.
Yeah, you definitely want a tempering of justice with mercy at times.
Exactly.
You don't want one or the other completely. But it's like what we were saying before with justice. With imagine if we operated our justice system like Christianity would have us operate it. Like, so if you go to court and you've committed violent crimes and you've done bad things, are you going to say that, well,
substitute someone? Yeah,
Your Honor, I have someone who's innocent who's willing to go to prison for me, so therefore I can go and continue terrorizing the community because someone innocent is willing to go to jail for me.
Wait,
well, I mean that.
I have a perfect loop around for it. Okay,
What's that? Go ahead.
Imagine the person is perfect. Okay, so like it's not just that they're innocent, but they're actually perfect. Doesn't that make it
anything wrong?
Exactly. See, it's all good now.
I mean, the judge would have to say, yes, you've committed robbery, burglary, assault and battery, attempted murder, but this person's perfect, so we'll go ahead and we'll lock them up, and you're free to go and continue doing whatever it is you do. Go ahead, sir.
See, now you understand Christianity.
Well, there you go. Why didn't you say that before? We can pack everything up here and go to church on Sunday, right?
Exactly. I try to get it, and I try to stress this. It's a point that I don't think many Christians can appreciate, is how strange the Christian claim is, because, and I understand why they feel this way. Many Christians, I think, in America feel they're the template. Like they are like the everything, the every American, whatever you want to call it. And so they really don't even think about like just simple phrases like thy Lord. And I'm trying to think, there's another one that just really creeps me out. And the cross itself has just been taken a Roman torture device and turned it into this idol that people are so, they're excited. They're like, look, I'm wearing the thing that they killed this guy around my neck. It's like, I see that.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely like it's become an element of American culture, that even people who don't really believe, you still kind of buy into the culture a little bit.
Yeah, like I think they see it as the template. Like they really do see it as the quote unquote normal. And to even question, like, no, this is a little killing someone and them undoing your sins and all this stuff.
it really doesn't. But think of what they had to work with, Amy. They had these people in the first century. They were like, "Oh, we've got this
Well,
stupid
yes.
practice of killing these animals. Can't we just say that God came down and died, so we don't have to do this bullshit anymore with killing these animals and burning their corpses? Because that's pretty stupid."
I give way more leniency the further back we go. So 2,000 years ago, before we really had a scientific method, and they were literally like cutting chickens' heads off to make sure that we could get rain. Then yeah, I can understand in that world where sacrifice makes sense, and actually, um, in mythic structure, in every script, in every song, about 2/3 of the way through the story, mythic structure defines that you have a sacrifice. Someone needs to die so that everyone gets really sad so that you can go into the third act and the final hero can confront the main villain. And all of that is cool as long as you take it metaphorically. It's when it becomes literal that it becomes creepy.
Well, it's a plot device. What you're saying.
Yes. They hate that term too. I use that term a lot, but it's a plot device.
That is a triggering term for them because you're pointing out that your beliefs are basically fable. They're a story.
Yes, they hate that term fable too, though they're easy to call. Like as soon as we start talking about the pagan religions, they love that term.
Like the ancient Egyptian religion, yeah,
Yes, those were fables.
Zoroastrianism, the Babylonian religion. Those are obviously bullshit, right?
Clearly, those are fables, and
I
and they
mean,
and they don't mean it insultingly, of course. They just mean fables. Those things that those people made up thousands of years ago. Little
uh,
people.
people they made it up to try to make sense of the world. They didn't know, but now we know that Christianity is true, and it's really one of those gods. It's just one happens to be the right god.
Yeah, they're God.
And if you don't believe in him, it's cool. He's just gonna torture you after you die. So, but
Yeah.
he loves you, Amy. He loves you. He loves you so much.
But he loves you. And so I'll bring up another good. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, what you were talking about earlier. I think it was what we were talking about, which is annihilation, which is fine. I mean, Judaism actually doesn't talk about burning you. It is extreme, is they're as vague as possible. My joke is it says that, they're going to go sleep with their fathers. We can make as many gay jokes as I would like. And, but yeah, it just means that they go to rest at the same place as their ancestors. But as soon as we get into Christianity and Judaism, they start to really get interested with what happens after you die.
Well, that really came into play after the Jews went into Babylon and Persia, actually, and they got influenced by Zoroastrianism, which does have that dichotomic afterlife where
Do they?
certain people go to one place and certain people go to another place. But no, the original Judaism, the way it's originally written in the Old Testament, yeah, everybody went to Sheol, the grave, and it was very vague about what actually takes place there. No explicit talk about punishments or people being tortured or anything like that. It's only after the Persian influence on that Christianity comes out and announces this doctrine on hell.
And that's because they also reinterpreted. Oh God, I forgot my. I was looking at chat and I forgot my point. What were you just saying?
Oh, I was talking about the Persian Zoroastrian influence on Judaism, which the Christians took, and they modified their doctrine to get a doctrine like hell. And it actually makes so much sense because if you read the Old Testament and you see like the activities of the Hebrews and the Jews, it's very different from Christians today. It's not like they were going around telling all their neighbors and like, hey, you better believe in this Yahweh guy because our religion's the only religion, the right one, and if you
Yeah.
don't believe in our religion, you're going to go to hell when you die. There was none of that. They did their travels, they raised their goats. The other people had their gods, they had their god. It was no big deal, right? I mean, if you came into them and said, "Hey, your religion looks cool, we want to convert," they would talk. There were procedures for that, but it wasn't like it's this essential have to convert everybody
There
or they're
was no
all going to
proselytizing.
suffer forever. Yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal because at the end of the day, you all go to the same place when you die. So if you really want to come with us and you really want to mutilate all your genitals, hey, knock yourself out. But otherwise, it's not really that big of a deal, you know?
And I remember my point, which was that they really reinterpreted the snake. In that, in the original story, he was just the serpent, but he wasn't Satan. He really wasn't this like anthropomorphized thing to where, and now he is, you know, by the time we get to Christianity and Islam, he is now the ruler of hell, which once again still doesn't make sense to me because
Even the Old Testament is so vague about the Satan. He's not really clearly spoken of in the Old Testament.
yeah, well, it was just that there wasn't a saint. I think it was just the serpent. I think the
In the original
serpent
story, yeah, it was
was
just
just
the
Adam and
serpent.
Eve.
He was just a wily serpent, a talking vegetarian snake with legs who just
Yeah,
decided to try to trick Adam and Eve, and
and
that's
they
why
yeah.
and that's why God doesn't even worry about punishing the devil in that story. He just punishes the snake. He takes his legs away, which if if the Christian version of that is true, it's a non-sentient animal. It doesn't know what it's doing. Then the devil possessed it and made it do all these things. Why are you punishing the snake? But in the original story, that's all it was a snake.
And
So God punished it.
wouldn't that make all current snakes demons? I mean, first of all, that's badass. But what?
A walking talking vegetarian snake with legs. Because remember, before the flood, all animals only ate vegetables. So,
I know. Which
imagine a snake taking a bite out of an apple,
which
or
doesn't
an
that mean
orange.
the Bible thought that vegetarian? That's a weird. That's almost like a position of vegetarianism. It's like
Uh,
they were all vegetarians, and then you fuckers fucked up.
yeah. Then eventually, after the flood, God said, "Okay, you guys want to eat meat? Go ahead, eat meat. Whatever." But I guess you could make an argument that it's more like an optimum diet. It's more of a, you know, uh, Smokey would say, "Oh, it's a more healthy diet because pork is unhealthy, so that's why God told them they couldn't eat pork."
Yeah, I don't think they knew that at all. I think they were just like pig, mud, bad.
Disgusting. Yeah, look at that animal wallowing in the mud. That's nasty.
Yep. And I mean, at the time, it was probably a good idea because they probably weren't cooking their food well and they had parasites. The problem is that it's been 2,000 years, 3,000 years if you're Jewish or more.
It no longer applies, obviously.
Yeah. Oh no, my joke is I am not religious for bacon reasons.
Absolutely right.
And yeah, I'm not following how many commandments? 600 commandments? No,
613. If you add them all
no
up,
me,
I mean,
no me gusta.
of course, they most of them would say most of those are abrogated. They don't apply
I
today,
know.
but
Nah, they like having the They like I joke about the love pillow, but they like having like a poster of the 10. A lot of them don't even know there are 600. So they're like, what? 600?
well, I guess they would say, "Oh, most of them, stem from one of the 10." That's like a summary of like the
Yes.
important ones.
Or the common apologetic is, well, he was here, he fulfilled. I'm trying to think which root it is. I think he fulfilled the law, he fulfilled prophecy, so we don't have to follow the law, which doesn't
Well,
follow the laws anymore.
so they would say um, that the things in the law that were a foreshadowing of something to come, such as animal sacrifice, the dietary laws, these are the things that are illegal in the law just because. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. Just do this because X, Y, and Z. Those would be abrogated. But the natural law, which is things that are inherently good or bad, like stealing or adultery, or of course, according to them, being homosexual. So those are intrinsically bad. So they're still bad.
Can I bring up how much Christians love talking about that Muslims throw gays off buildings? Like, you can hear the giddiness. Like, they love that point, even though they're like 100 years. They were 100 years past them doing that to gays.
I mean, truth be told, there are still a lot of them who would do that if they thought they could
Oh,
get away with it.
I'm sure there's many parts of
Of
the
course,
country where that does happen still.
they would just have to be very careful about who's watching their web browser history.
Yeah.
Because it turns out ones who tend to be so against it tend to have interest in that direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the whole homosexuality thing is a very weird issue. It's also, I love getting, this is a side point, but not a side point, in that I get in arguments with lots of National Socialists who believe that Jews are pushing homosexuality and transgenderism. I then point to passages of the Torah that bans cross-dressing and homosexuality. And almost always I get crickets.
Well, I mean, where do you find these Nazis to talk to on Discord?
I've been on 4chan for almost a decade now. I should get off 4chan.
There's a lot of Nazis on 4chan.
Only on a specific board, only on poll. But every other board is pretty, well, I don't want to say every other board is good, but every other, yeah, that's their containment board. Yes.
Well,
but
I mean, according to Smokey Saint, you are a Nazi, so maybe
I know. I forgot I am a Nazi. I'm everything they hate, which is funny. Like, I am
a Nazi.
I literally everything that they hate. They hate
wrapped up into one.
Indeed, they hate my centrism, they hate my atheism, they hate the Jewish family, they hate the I guess the bi tranny, the like, if you could wrap up except for actually, it's funny. And the fact, I just want to point this out, that I'm coincidentally against identity politics, because they're very much into identity politics, just their specific flavor of it.
Well, I remember it was about a week ago. Smokey was, because someone was asking him about getting on Modern Day Debate. I don't know. I guess James has been really busy lately, so he's not been super responsive. But Smokey thought that he was being ignored because of how he went off on you. So Smokey's like, I guess James is a little mad at me because I went off on the disgusting, degenerate Nazi one of his vitriolic rants about you. I said, no, I don't think it's that, Smokey. I think James is just really busy lately. So, he's not being super responsive. I've heard that from a number of people that he's not super responsive.
Funny. It was interesting seeing I will say it did make me a little happy hearing them explain to like in the other chat, like all of the Christians were like, well, it was pretty good, but maybe you could have insulted them maybe a little less.
You didn't have to go that far.
And each time they were like, well, I guess we're gonna have to explain to the other Christians here what an ad hominem is. And I'm like, I guess you guys are, aren't you? Because insulting doesn't work. I make lots of jokes. I like making jokes. I almost can't not. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt people either. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. Nor do I feel that it's very persuasive.
Well, I told Smokey, I said, no, it's not that. Because after the debate, I told James on Modern Day Debate that I said, no, our goal was to trigger Smokey. so he kind of made an ass out of himself, but we were trying to do that. So we were trying to get him to blow up and true to form, he did.
And not even that I was supposedly triggering them. I would say that I was trying to make good points, but I knew making good points would trigger them.
Well, that is a form of triggering.
But no, I not only I would debate them again, just like I would debate any Christian, or just like Mr. Batman had probably misgendered me at least a dozen times in under a minute. I think he like found interesting ways to. It was almost impressive in the amount of ways that he could fit "sir" into a sentence.
And he's a pro at that.
But that, in turn, just becomes funny to me because you're like, calm down. Is my existence triggering you so? But you know the topic was like religion, right? And so like I have to like bring him back, like, okay, stop, I get it, I know, you can insult me, like it doesn't bother me, insult me, yeah, calm down.
Well, sir,
and it's so funny too. I said the word ma'am once to him and he then freaked out too, so it doesn't go both ways.
You called him ma'am?
Yeah, I called him in between the times that he was muting me. I go, well, ma'am, and that freaked out. He said, no, you called me, so you show me respect. I am a biologist. I'm like, okay,
Triggered.
buddy. Exactly. They do it to themselves. It's not even like I am some social. It's not like I'm going around being like, you transphobic pieces of shit. I'm like, hi, let's talk about this. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay.
Well, like their points and their reasoning for their beliefs are not very good. So,
well, yeah, you get them off script, and then they don't know what to do.
What do they really have to work with? Well,
cosmological argument.
Well, yeah, and 1 + 1 = 2 equals Jesus, because 1 + 1 can't be 2 without God to make it 2.
Excuse me, he is a science teacher, and I shouldn't make fun. I only make fun of that because he brings it up so much.
Yeah, I haven't seen any documentation on that. Going to lie to homeschoolers like Ken Hovind did is not really teaching science.
And yeah, that stuff does make me worry me sometimes, because there are people like him that go in there and they're like, listen, kids, this evolution unit that I was supposed to teach you, it's all shit.
Biology? What do they know? Biologists? They're dumbasses. All the PhDs who spend their whole life studying evolution, morons.
James, you're just being you are a NASA shill. You are a bio shill.
I believe in biology. Yes, I am a shill.
Though it's funny how it's so. Let's just hold both of these things side by side, because we get from one position they will go, don't you believe in biology? And I'm like, yes. So 72 hours of decomposition, go. After death. And they're like, well, biology, do we really want to talk about biology? How much do we really know about humans?
But Amy, he's God. He can resurrect himself if he wants. Come on, Amy.
I know, exactly.
Of course, he's God. What do you expect? It doesn't work for anybody else. And yeah, God, he rose some other people from the dead, and the disciples were still amazed every time he did it, like it was the first time. Like, no, you've seen him resurrect people before. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
You've seen him feed the crowds before. Calm down. Like, oh, well, shit, now he's walking on water. Well, that's new. You guys have seen him do magic before.
And it also well, I guess not coincidentally, but it just seemed to happen 2,000 years ago in a way that we can never verify it again.
Well, and that's kind of what you said in your opening statement, that all these claims they make, they happen to just stop making them, and God just happened to decide to disappear as soon as you would expect verification, where there could be pictures or even just reliable witness testimony from reliable historians, not ones that existed in 2000 BC.
Yeah.
Anything
And
even approaching the modern era.
And it seems, though correlation isn't exactly causation, it seems that the further away we get from these claims, the less miracles seem to occur.
Yeah, the older it was, the more outlandish, the more direct and empirical the intervention of God was. You know, he flooded the earth 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, I once again, I'll never understand that morality. How everyone, he once again, everyone's evil, but he can't Thanos snap and make them good because that would destroy their free will. You know what's not going to destroy their free will? Drowning them to death. That's totally in
Apparently
line
not.
with their free will.
Yeah, apparently not. I mean, uh, and it was. What do you say? It was pretty ineffective because people are kind of assholes today, aren't they?
It's everything that he does is ineffective. He's always like, "All right, do this." It doesn't happen. From day one with Adam and Eve to Moses to Noah. Is there a story where he gets it right? Where
Yeah.
everything ends up happy and it's just that was it's like, yep, Yahweh actually had it right this time.
Yeah, like the giants that
Oh,
I
giants.
although I didn't hear it. Remember in the first debate when Smokey's like, "Oh well, I mean, they didn't fossilize, so there were giants. They just didn't fossilize. So you can't expect evidence of them because the 20 and 30 foot tall humans because their bones didn't fossilize." Amy.
I want you to know that it's crazy that we even live in a world where there is common apologetics for giants.
For
This
the
is
20 and 30 foot tall humans.
20 and 30 foot tall humans. There are people that will sit there and legitimately argue with you that these people existed. Just like they'll argue that I forget how old the oldest person is in the Bible, but it's hundreds of years.
969 Methuselah.
Yeah, it's an easy 900 years.
Yeah, what was it on Standing for Truth? He was debating Neanderthals on with David Neff today, and
Oh, I saw that. It switched when they continued to show.
he was saying in it that the Neanderthals had so many mutations because it was the patriarchs. They're 600 years old having kids. Slinging out babies like NBA players. Having remember, I guess they had multiple wives, so 4, 5, 6 wives, each one of them, perpetually pregnant. These 600-year-old men, I guess they've got it, they've got it going on.
2 points with that. One, we know how we have of all the species, we have detailed remains of Neanderthals, and they were so. If they're leaving behind it, so they're leaving behind remains, just not the remains of when they were giant. And number two, it goes back to they love this because first of all, I think they just love sounding technical, which is another point that we brought up is that we're degrading. This is another new concept I've only heard in the past few years, is that somehow our genes are de-evolving or degrading or like we're all
Genetic
falling
entropy.
apart. Yeah, genetic entropy, which
Or,
there is no evidence for.
well, I mean, they don't really have much to work with, especially around genetics and anything. They're just grasping at straws.
Also, I just want to play this. I'm going to play every joke I can.
Get it?
Ta-dunch.
Tall tales because they were giants. Yeah, Ken Hovind believes in that. I mean, why do you think, like, I forget how tall the tallest person in modern, why do you think it was like 9 feet tall? And he had a whole host of medical problems associated with being that tall. I think he died at 24 years old, 25 years old, um, largely due to the problems with being that size. It's just not
It becomes a giraffe problem. It's that you're going to extremes to have what nature doesn't like to begin with.
And you have all these problems associated with gravity and like Ken Hovind with the, oh, could you ever get a pig the size of Texas? And remember his debate with Erica, and Erica's like, well, Kent, what would an animal like that big eat? I mean, and that's true. An animal like that would require millions of calories every day just to sustain life. I mean, what would it literally eat?
And I don't. It is amazing that in one hand they do not understand, to me, which seems so easy, which is natural selection, and yet in the other hand, once again, the year 2020, and we're talking about giants.
Well, I mean, their whole idea with genetic entropy is that natural selection, it couldn't select against neutral mutations. I actually thought about this before I fully accepted evolution. I, I, I thought, I said, you'd expect to find a lot more neutral mutations that natural selection can't select against. But the way I've resolved that is that there's an inherent biological cost to anything. So for the body to make useless structures, that does incur a biological cost. So that is it's a subtle disadvantage, but it is enough, I think, for natural selection to act on that would kind of filter out these excessive random mutations like, oh, well, why didn't humans evolve a third nipple? Because it wouldn't affect your ability to survive, so why would it, why would it keep us at with only two?
Well, they have a hard time understanding both beneficial and, even more so for whatever reason, benign mutations. Like in their head, they always associate mutation with bad, and that's just not true.
The fact is, most of them are pretty benign. They're pretty neutral.
The example I try and use for something that could happen in humans is you have a mutation for webbed hands and feet, which doesn't get selected for until we're in water world or whatever, and all of a sudden everything's in water, and then all of a sudden turns out web and feet child boy is able to mate off with others, pass on their genes, that mutation becomes popular. It's about the environment, and someone having web hands and feet right now isn't also going to die. They're not just going to randomly die. So it's not a net negative to which it can be completely selected out for.
But it's not positive enough to accumulate.
Exactly. We are not. Exactly. We don't live in an environment to which that gets overly selected.
Well, I mean, apparently some humans are born with partial tails. I mean, it's not common, but it is in the DNA still. So you have to ask yourself, if they're intelligently designed, why would God put in there the code for a tail? It just usually gets turned off, but one out of 50,000 births, for whatever reason, it just happens to not get shut off, and you get a small atrophied little tail.
Exactly. Yeah, and they also don't like pointing out that that whales have leg bones, embedded deep within them
Well, Ken
for no
Hovind
use.
would say, oh, well, those are connected to the reproductive system of the whale. It has nothing to do with walking. It's for muscle attachments. And it's like, well, Ken, so if those bones have that residual use, that's why they haven't completely atrophied, but they've atrophied to the point where they are the lowest cost to the organism to produce while still holding some residual function.
Yeah. And it also changes function sometimes, so that something that was used for something millions of years ago slowly can change into something that either has a dual use or no use at all.
Or a secondary purpose, like they're not used for walking anymore, but they're still useful for the muscle attachment. So therefore, they can atrophy. We don't really need them to be big enough to support their weight, but it's better than not having them at all.
Also, people ask me sometimes why I go so hard against religion, why I'm trying to do all this content, why can't I leave the poor theists alone? And one of the reasons is because of subjects like evolution, where they actually try to affect public policy. They try and get books like Pandas for People into classrooms. And if you're not careful, they really will be successful at those attempts, and they will further circumvent our education that it already is.
No, you're right. I mean, it's like the thing like why bother refuting flat earthers? Because anybody who has an IQ above 20 knows that it's all stupid anyway. Well, I mean, unfortunately, if we allow them to propagate their material and there's no response to it because we assume anybody who would believe it is, loony. Well, I mean, eventually it's going to pick up some traction. Unfortunately, it does need to be refuted, as dumb as it may sound.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same, I would say, probably with most skeptics, with most conspiracy theories or most superstitious beliefs. It's just, unfortunately, this is the most common superstitious belief, and people take it as factual just out of the gate.
And it's not to say that there are not benign aspects of Christianity. And like I've said before, if you are a Christian and you just like it and you go to church and you enjoy it and you just want to do it because you want to do it and you don't really care if it's true or not, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to stop you. If that gives your life meaning and it makes you happy, okay. But there are unfortunately other aspects of it that are not as benign. Like I said before, how many children have been subjected to being beaten to death and maimed because that book advocates Bronze Age parenting that says, well, if your kid is doing something you don't like, beat the crap out of them. That's the appropriate way to raise your kid. And oh, by the way, the book also says if that doesn't work, execute them. So I mean, fortunately, we
Biblical
don't
morality.
we don't go that far anymore, but still you've got kids who have been subjected to these brutal beatings based on this book that is not true, but it advocates Bronze Age parenting. The height of human intellect and intelligence is in that book, according to them. And even though we have doctors today who say that actually no, it is harmful to beat your kids, it does have negative impacts on them. And you get people who say, well, it's not that big of a deal. My parents used to, spank me when I was bad and I'm okay. Well, let me tell you, not everybody who plays Russian roulette ends up getting shot. It's still not a good idea. Okay, so the fact that you can point to a few aspects where it wasn't really that bad does not mean that overall it's a good idea that we allow parents to be able to unilaterally beat their children whenever they feel that there's an infraction, like 17th or 18th century naval officers.
Exactly. And one of the worst downsides to religion is that it cannot be edited. So it's not like you can even go in there and change the passages and make them better, or even get rid of the bad passages.
I mean, well, we've they've gotten better on some. I mean, like the passages that say, if you take a rod and you beat your slave and he doesn't die right away, then it's okay. Now they would say, well, that's not saying to beat your slave. That's only if you have beaten your slave when you are in trouble for it. It's not
Yeah.
saying beat your slave with a rod. It's saying if you did and they die right then, you're in trouble. But
Yeah, and
fortunately they've backed away from that, but they haven't backed away from the book that says the parts there that say foolishness abounds in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him. They haven't given up on that.
Yeah, in fact, they will defend it.
They defend it. They won't go as far as to say the next passage that says, by the way, if that doesn't work, kill him. They
Yeah,
fortunately usually don't do that, but unfortunately, when you give any old bum who can sire a child with someone the power of inflicting beatings on people, they end up sometimes accidentally killing them, and it happens all the time, all around America. You could do searches for people who end up beating their kids to death, thinking that they are just being a biblical parent, being a good parent.
it says it in the book.
It must be the right way to do. So there are benign aspects to Christianity, but there are harmful aspects of it that do hurt real people.
Well, that's why I lean more anti-theist, because I think any anything good from religion, and was Hitchens' most often point before he died, is anything good from religion can be done in a secular means, but ask yourself, can you think of a single thing or a single belief or a single bad action that was taken in the name of a religion? And your mind just floods with reasons. And so, why not just shed the bad and keep the good?
Well, no, I mean, and you even in your own life, you see now, honestly, how you express your gender affects nobody else. No, why would anybody else care about that? But of course, there's a book that tells them that you were designed a specific way, so you're rebelling against the way that you were designed,
Exactly.
and it affects everybody in the LGBT community who are doing things that don't have any impact on anybody else, but their book tells them it's icky and it's bad.
I mean, according to their book, I should be put to death. It's
Yeah, and you're
pretty
just a person
specific.
trying to live your life, trying to live the best life that you can do, and you're not hurting anybody else. So again, what's the big deal, except their book says it's icky and it's bad.
In fact, I believe, and this is, I can only say this for myself, but I think I have a high moral code. I think I have a more just moral code than the moral. Because, well, I have to phrase this carefully, because I think they're being moral, but then that their Bible prescribes. I think that I have a better moral code than their Bible prescribes. I also think they ignore giant swaths of their Bible in order for them to be moral.
Well, their moral code is it's based on fiat. It's not based on reality. It's just based on, well, this guy says it's bad, so it's bad. It's just arbitrarily, given to them. It's not any analysis of which behaviors are actually harmful to society.
Yep, it's just what pleases God.
So because they don't even understand it. They don't understand why God doesn't approve of people being gay or people doing any of the other things that he disapproves of that don't hurt anybody. He just does, so therefore it must be bad. He must have a reason for it, right?
You just have to understand that He is above us. You'll know once you're dead. See? Doesn't that make you feel better?
Yeah, I guess so, if you put it that way, right? I mean, we'll know when we die.
Yeah. I also love when they use that as a threat. I think hell's been a common theme tonight, but I love that just low burn threat when they can't understand, don't have a rebuttal for something, as always. Well, you'll see. Oh, you'll get it soon. You'll find out.
What was that, Ken Hovind? Because he's always saying he's like, "Oh, Stephen Hawking died last year." Well, he knows the truth now, doesn't he, old Steve? He knows God's real. He's met him. I bet God wasn't too happy either.
It's almost like they're giddy if people are burning in hell.
I mean, I guess they'll realize that it's perfect justice. So, of course, why would they not be burning in hell? That's where they're supposed to be. But you see, Amy, you should be there, but you know, Jesus died for you, so you don't have to go and burn in hell. So
Oh, I'm so glad he got tortured. It all makes sense. Yeah, that's also kind of a bait. That's always been a bait and switch for me. Also, the whole him dying and then we get to live forever. It's
I mean, I think an eternal life would be, after a while, it would be kind of a torture, actually. Like, I think if even in the future, if we're able to basically stop aging or slow it down to the point where it goes so slowly, I don't think people would even want to live forever after. I mean, imagine after living like a million years. I mean, you've done everything there is to do, every imaginable way, over and over again, almost an infinite number of times. You've read every book, you've thought every thought, you've answered every question. You know, what do you do?
Well, this stems, I think, because they really can't comprehend how long forever is. They can't even comprehend, like, just you start to get past the first 1,000 years, the first 10,000, the first million, the first, I always like to say, 1,000 million to show how big billion is.
Billion years.
We're now going past billions of years. Um, yeah. My brain becomes mush just trying
So,
to.
so 800 quadrillion years from now, they're going to be sitting in the exact same spot, looking up at their God, parroting the same phrases they've been parroting for 800 quadrillion years. God, you're so great. God, I love you. You're great. You're the best God ever. You did a really good job, God. I love you. And God is just looking at them, nodding in agreement. Yes, yes, that's true. I am great. I am a good God. Yes, you're right. Everything you're saying is right. Continue. And then what do you have to do for the next 800 quadrillion years? The same fucking thing. Yeah, after a while, that you might envy the people in hell because at least they're doing something.
Well, the common joke is, that's where all the fun people are.
Uh, I mean, I can't think of anything worse than that kind of vapid, soulless existence of being a zombie to a Canaanite deity.
Yeah, it's so funny how they target specific tribes, but I guess it makes sense back then that was the politics of the day.
And it's lingering on to affect our politics even today.
Oh yeah, well don't even get me started cuz well, I guess get me started. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that has a middle position on like issues between Israel and Palestine. I actually get angry at both of them because I'm like you're like the same people. Like I could take freaking needles and do blood tests and it's going to be so similar and you guys are just you're gonna have a fight for 1,000 more years over this? They probably are. But, ladies and gentlemen, religion.
A piece of basically useless real estate in the middle of the desert that
I
you
know
know
they fight over desert. So many other comedians make this joke, but it's desert. They are fighting over desert land.
and it happens to be the desert land that has almost no oil. Go figure, right?
And all three of the monotheistic religions want it. They all have different reasons to why they think Jerusalem's holy.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. I mean, fortunately, it does seem like religion is on the decline, and I really do think that
I
maybe over the
agree.
next 50 to 100 years, you're going to see major. I mean, you've already seen it, but I think you're going to see continued abatement of religion. It's just going to slowly wither and die. Like you even said, most Jewish people today are basically secular. They don't really believe in it. It's more of a cultural uh, identity than a true religion.
I agree. And the Jewish thing is very weird. They have their foot half out the door. Um, my joke with them is that they're the only group of religious people where you can come to them And you can be like, oh, I don't know how to say this, but I don't believe in a God. And they're like, oh, you still believe in the God thing? And they're like, what do you mean you still believe in the God thing? It's Judaism. And yeah, giant swath of them don't believe. But I am stuck because, like I said, you have the people that really hate Jews, and then I have my Jewish family, and then on the third hand that I don't have, I'm technically trying to get rid of Judaism because it's a religion. Uh,
I mean, I guess when you talk with these Nazis, I mean, what's their main gripe against Judaism, or do they buy into the idea that Jews are pushing, the leftist social, like like the LGBT issue that comes from Judaism? I guess there's or Jews.
I mean, it depends on who you ask, but the main theme is that the Jews control everything, and for most of them, they control both parties, and it's just the craziest thing about it, about most conspiracies, is it means that in some ways they're geniuses and idiots at the same times. And I always try and ask them questions like, if the Jews control the world, why did Bernie Sanders not become president? And it quickly becomes, well, he's not the right Jew. And I'm like,
Well,
okay, well, if there's like good Jews and bad Jews, I mean, we're already differentiating. Um, it's very, very weird. I always have to say that though, because people are always like Nazis, because we are in an era where the term gets thrown around loosely, but they take that very. It's the only place where you can go where they will call you a shill if you're not pushing fascism, because
on the 4chan.
on poll, because I can't
Oh,
even say 4chan, because if you're on B, it's like video games, porn, and memes.
so where'd you find that? How'd you decide to start interacting with these Nazis on there?
So it didn't start with interacting with Nazis. It started with finding 4chan through World of Warcraft back in the day. And because they would post 4chan memes in trade chat. And so I was like, what the hell is this? And I'd go on there. And so I spent a lot of time on B. They have a bunch of other boards aren't that are interesting. Some of them, I've been on the LGBT board, and they have a new board called Bant that I kind of like, because it's like B, but there's no porn, and
Okay.
that cuts out half of that. And so on any other board that isn't poll, if you say anything highly racist or highly national socialist, the common saying is, go back, get the fuck back to poll.
Oh, okay.
Get back to your containment board. Like in almost any other board doesn't like poll. But in the same respect, because I'm everything they hate, it's been so hard not to spend, at this point, years getting in debates with them. But they never believe who I am anyway.
They don't think that
Uh,
you're a transgender Jewish person?
well, funny you say that. The common thing on poll now, it used to be years ago when you disagreed with them, they would be like, "Oh, it's a JDIF, a Jewish Israeli, it's just a Jewish Israeli Defense Force, or oh, it's a Mossad agent."
A
Another
Mossad
thing,
agent.
another thing to know about National Socialists is that there's no other group of people that uses Hebrew or Yiddish more. Like they love it. I can use all their sayings like "Oy vey, it's been 6 gagillion," and oh, it's another Shoah.
Oh,
and
the shekels. You got them shekels.
yes, got my shekels, and oh, they found out, shut it down. Like these are all memes on there, but it has slowly changed to like this crazy thing. If you say on poll, this is very specifically on poll, but if you say any type of like liberalish thing, their common reply now is you'll never be a woman. Like they do, like their only insult now
To you
is to
specifically?
anyone. No, no,
Oh,
no,
to
no.
anybody?
The first time, because I only go on a little bit now, but the first time that I went back there, I had a heart attack because I was like, how the fuck do they know I'm a tranny? And then I was looking around, and I'm like, they're saying that to anyone that doesn't have like a fascist viewpoint. And it's like, oh damn, trannies have taken over. Like if you don't even call people Mossad agents or JDIF, they just
They
call
just assume
everyone
they're all
oh
trannies.
trannies. Ah, good
Well, I mean,
time.
it's kind of like that. You've seen the black guy who's famous for going to the KKK rallies and interacting with them.
See, and he probably convinces and connects people. I've actually had good conversations on there, but it's muddled with all of the terribleness.
Yeah, yeah. He's gone for like 20 years. He's gone to KKK rallies, and it's kind of weird. They're all doing their thing and burning their crosses and doing everything that they do, and then there's just this black guy standing off to the side, you know. And then of course he's gotten ridiculed for like, what are you doing talking to these people, and trying to have dialogue with these people. But I mean, he has convinced some of them over the
Oh
years
yeah.
to they talk and see that this is a black guy. He's not a bad guy. Maybe they're not all bad people. Maybe we could just deal with people, not as groups. Maybe.
Exactly. In fact, that's the only way that you win people over is that you have to not hate them
Well,
generally.
yeah,
And it's the
yeah.
hardest thing to do. But I know because of all this years on being on Poland that like I could sit down with a National Socialist who would literally sit there and be his first opening words would be like, I'm putting you in the oven. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. After that, can we have a conversation?
Yeah, that's why. So somebody like Mr. Batman tries to trigger you with the Sir sandwich, the Sir salad,
Exactly.
Sir, and you're just like, is that the best you got? Come on, at least you're not threatening to put me in an oven.
And it's always it's defeating for them because I don't start off topic. It's always like, well, bringing it back. I was in to debate Mr. Batman, I believe, on God. It was just the classic, does God exist? Like right now, and within a minute, just because he heard my voice was enough to derail the conversation into absurdity because he can't get. I even was like, you can call me pronouns. Let's just get it out of your system, and then let's. But he couldn't. He couldn't get over the fact that I accepted. I must have been the first trans person that was like, no, 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 do whatever, but let's talk.
Yeah,
Because he had nothing to say after that. I couldn't even get him back onto why a God is real, except for him to everything tying it back around went back to being trans. Like at that point on, it was like, and then you, sir, are burning in hell like a man. You're like, that is okay. Okay.
he uses the word "sir" an obnoxious amount
Sir.
of times. Every other word out of this he says "sir" more than like a Marine Corps recruit in basic training. I mean, he just with the "sir," it's like every fifth word is "sir."
I mean,
But
and
he has
not
no
to.
argument.
Well, he doesn't even practice a mostly common apologetics. He preaches, which is very similar precepts.
Well, like the debate, I think it was Jim Majors he debated with, and um, Jim Majors mentioned something about I forget how they got onto it, but Batman, he just derailed the whole thing to how do you know pedophilia is bad? How do you know it's bad to molest children? And it was, I think the debate was about the flood. Oh yeah, Jim made he questioned the morality of the flood. So then Mr. Batman's like, oh well, how do you base your morality? How do you know it's bad to molest children? Well, that's not what we're here to talk about. And he would not stop with that.
Yeah,
With that
number
line.
one, that's a red herring. Number two, how do we connect me here from Jesus says pedophilia isn't wrong? I want to get that connection.
Well, it's he was questioning, Jim, the Batman's opponent was questioning the morality of the flood. So then Mr. Batman's like, well, what do you base your morality on? Why is it bad to be a pedophile? Because where do you base that on? He's trying to get them to say, oh, you have no objective basis of your morality. You're just picking and choosing what's good and what's bad. But yeah, it was a dumpster fire.
Yep.
Of epic proportion. That was about a month ago after that. It was about a month ago, and then Mr. Batman went on the after show. I forget whose it was, but it was a dumpster fire.
I mean, it's going back to, and they often want to take it back to the objective morality argument because then they want to say, well, where does this come from? Just like the laws of logic. They're like, okay, so now that we agree that the laws of logic, which I think the laws of logic themselves are such a fucking rabbit hole in themselves because they're tautologies, but now that we have agreed that something is what it is, where does that come from? It's like, no, we are describing. We're telling you what is.
We're looking at how things seem to work, and we're coming up with syllogisms and explanations that seem to explain that we can use to then understand other things.
Yeah.
Like if something logically follows in this situation, then it probably logically follows in another situation, but it's not. It's just how things seem to work. It doesn't necessarily mean, I don't know. I don't dive too far down into those rabbit holes, but it's not a convincing argument to me.
It's mostly a precept line that goes down that rabbit hole, because anytime that you ask someone like Saitan Bergenkate to present evidence, he'll just say he doesn't do that with atheists. And so, well, I mean, that kind of defeats the point. You're telling me that you're not going to give me evidence until I'm already a believer of some sort, which means that he's just going to preach.
Basically, yeah. I mean, hey, if that's what you want to do, if you want to be a preacher and just preach to people who already believe, that's fine. But you're not going to win over anybody else.
Yeah.
You're not going to get us to be convinced that that's a logical way of thinking. It's like the argument about the laws of physics. Like, oh, is there a law giver that makes gravity work? Well, no, we're just trying to explain how things seem to work in the universe. So we come up with laws because when we see something only work a certain way 100% of the time, we kind of think that's the way it's going to be. It's a law.
I won't do, because I'm trying to even think of an example, but why questions are almost always turtle is the way down. You can always, like a two or 3 year old that's just finding out things for the first time, you can always go, but why? But then why? But then why? But then why? It almost always we are asking how questions. We are asking more often, how does something happen? Like, how did the earth form? Because asking something like why the earth form is almost subjective, because you can pick different times. You could say, well, the earth formed 4.5 billion years ago, or you could say technically the Earth's materials were in different solar systems before, in other stars before they supernovaed, and then you can say, well, it goes back to when the universe began. You can keep on going, why, but really each of those things should really have how answer, and the how they never answer. If I ask a theist for how they did any of the miracles, like how they resurrected, how did Moses part the Red Sea, they never give me like a diagram. It's never like a mechanism for how this can happen and how this can replicate. It's
Well,
just,
when you can invoke magic, you can do
yeah,
whatever you want.
exactly.
And that's like the guy who was debating the flood with Ken Hope, and he's like, if you just want to sit there and say, well, I don't know if people can't make a boat that long that floats and feed all those animals and get all the waste out of the ark, God could figure out a way to do it, right?
I
He's
know.
like, but how scientific is that? How if you're going to debate something like is the flood scientifically accurate, you actually would have to show how God would do that, not just
Exactly.
he just did. And he's like, well, God could wave a magic wand and make it so that all the animals would produce no waste through the whole time. They would eat and they would just not produce any waste, and it would be magic. But how do you defend that? How did that happen?
And so, see, here's two things, and I want it to sound ridiculous because it is ridiculous. On one hand, they will have no mechanism for poop scooping technology on an ark. On the other hand, they will want to go into finely detailed models of why the abiogenesis early models or hypotheses are incorrect. And it's like, okay, you don't accept these. First of all, the majority of science doesn't accept these yet. Not only that, but they then infer from that that they shouldn't accept evolution. So now you're not accepting evolution, something that we do accept because we're working on something that you don't accept. And you're also having us accept something else without giving us any mechanisms.
Uh,
So is this
I mean,
not
imagine
crazy?
that. Imagine that. Imagine scientists looking at the models for abiogenesis and saying, "We're not convinced of which one, or even if it's any of these yet. We're just not sure yet." Imagine that. Imagine them not just randomly picking one and saying it's got to be this one no matter what, and we're just going to run with that, and you can't disprove it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's not how science works. If they're not convinced any of those models have been proven yet, they're not going to adopt one of those models. It could be one of those models. It could be a modified version. It could be different. We just don't know yet. But that's why they're doing work in the field.
And I'm going to bring up a point here. I'm going to show here that Jason said. It's worse than that. It's worse that apologists think they are evolutionary biologists. They think they are better and know more than evolutionary biologists because they will sit there with a straight face to experts and tell them not only are they wrong, but that all the experts are wrong, and will have nothing
Absolutely.
in return.
Well, and that's what I've said before. I mean, they're literally saying the whole field of biology, it's all bullshit. Astronomy, bullshit. Geology, bullshit. Uh, Cosmology, anthropology, linguistics, history, it's all bullshit. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say, "Aha! But I happen to have this book here, which is a collection of the babblings of Bronze Age goat herders, and this is actually true." So all modern science, whenever it contradicts with that, it's bullshit. This is what's true. Run with this.
And yet they are absolutely offended, and I can't, sometimes I can tell better than others if they're faking it. If you ask them, where's your model, when are you submitting your journal, they are like, oh, I how could I be here to present my model to you or the scientific community?
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's like Nathan Thompson when he tried to debate Aaron Ra, and he refused to submit a model for his flat Earth because he knows full well any model he submitted would be torn to shreds. He just wants to sit there and try to poke holes at the globe and say, well, I don't understand how this aspect of the globe works, or I don't think that works. But they're never going to propose something that's better because, well, they don't have anything better.
And I have to say, in Aaron, it's Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron's defense, he came, at least from my understanding, he came to the debate, both of them, with the understanding that Nathan was going to present a model. And when
Yes.
Nathan tried to do a bait and switch, where he's like, of course I'm going to defend the model, and they started the debate, and he's like, model?
He's
There's
like,
a
yeah, you sent it to me.
model?
He's like, yeah, you sent it to me. He's like, oh, I sent that, but I don't really, that's not really my model. I don't really endorse that model.
And so, yeah, my new go-to joke is you want to make a flat earther disappear? Ask them for a model.
Exactly. It's like, reminds me of the Ken Hovind debate when Conspiracy Cats asked him about endogenous retroviruses, which absolutely torpedo creationism. It's one of the best evidence for evolution. And Ken Hovind's like, ERVs, retroviruses, what are those? I mean, you've been debating this for 30 years and you've never came across that before. I'm not prepared for that. I need to, do some research on that, and then I'll get back to you on that. But no, ERVs, that is, by the way, one of the strongest evidence for evolution. That's the way they're inserted in there clearly shows ancestral lineage to the great apes.
Yeah, the other, are you calling me a monkey? They for whatever reason, they really hate the fact that we have common ancestry with all other life forms on Earth. I view it as amazing and awesome. Both of those words, I not use hyperbolically. I don't understand. It's almost like they view it inversely.
Well, no, Amy. God just decided to make these creatures that look sort of like humans, but they're not quite human. They just look sort of like humans, and he called those apes. They're not common ancestors or anything. God just made them separately.
It's worse than that. They believe they have dominion over them. They really do believe like they are like the animals, the plant life, like it's all just here for them.
And that's why I love Gutsit Gibbon, Erica, because she just constantly throws it in their face that we are apes, really. I mean, that's what we are. You can't outgrow your ancestral clade. We are a version of great apes. It's what we are. Live with it.
Not only that, but if they took even a second to research any of the members of the great ape family, they would see how amazingly intelligent and emotional and the ability to pass down things like culture. Just
the ability to do art and understand music and all these things that they can do because, they are, in a way, they're kind of like us. Yes. Not quite as evolved. Well, you would say they're as evolved, but for their own species. But our species, evolution has given us a little bit higher intellect, but be that as it may, they are still very similar.
Well, that just tends to be our niche. Well, I would say our niche, actually, instead of intelligence, I would say we are the tool makers. Like, if you just look around us, all the shit that we're surrounded by, we are the tool makers. And so we've created all this stuff. And it also gives rise to... So I'm both extremely proud of us, but then I also dislike severely because I get this constantly, did a monkey fly to the moon? They're so amazed that we went to our closest satellite, which I am too. I'm actually a little pissed.
It is amazing if you think about it. Yeah.
It's see, but even that I put into context. I'm pissed we only went once. I feel like we gotta
No,
we gotta go there more times. But
we didn't only go there once. They went back up like 5 or 6 times
did they?
actually.
Oh yeah, you're
Throughout
right.
the
That's
70s.
true.
Yeah. It
But
just
you know what I
eventually it
mean.
got to be
Let's
so
slow down.
expensive. Yeah, before we were both alive. I think the last one was 74, 75. It just got to be so expensive, and Reagan was coming into office, so he needed to send all the money to the rich people who already had everything. He figured, well, if we just give them a little bit more, everything will be great. So we got to put everything else on the back burner.
And I think the end of the USSR when it fell, I think that was the end of the space race for the most part.
Yeah, even though I think maybe towards once the U.S. landed on the moon, I mean that we'd kind of won that race. But by that point, that's why a lot of people still don't believe that it happened. You get your moon conspiracy theorists, which is another segment of the conspiracy world that you mentioned.
Well, and you know what? I'll talk about the subject a little bit that's been on my mind so much lately. It annoys me how much we live in a conspiracy theory era. Like it both disappoints me, but it's both understandable in that we just got into this information age, and you would think, oh my gosh, we have all this information, but unfortunately it's still like the Wild West. And so like everyone just goes on these crazy conspiracy websites and all this shit, and we still don't know. We're going through this whole for the fake news and all this stuff. Hopefully in 100 years shit calms down, and like people start to understand what is bad information and what is good information, because I do think that the internet is going to be the death of religion. I do think that there has been no greater combative force to the religion than the internet.
Oh no, it's the ability to research, to look up their claims instantly. In that same debate, the Hovind debate from '95, and the guy he's debating with is having to like go to your local library and look up this book and that reference, because you'll find the information about the impossibility of building ships longer than about 300 feet, I think was the limit. You can't really go much further than 300 or 400 feet. If you go further than that with a wooden ship, it just doesn't work. But yeah, he's got to direct people to all these books and go to your library. And if they don't have it, you can try to get it from another library. We have access to all the information today to be able to prove conclusively that shit didn't happen.
Yeah, that the boat would not float. And I'm pretty sure that they've tried to even emulate it and they've failed.
I mean, Ken Ham, they built that ark in, I think it's in Kentucky or Tennessee. I mean, it's not a floating model; it's just a building. But I think even they said that it had a rainstorm and the building took some damage from it.
That's part of my act. I have a bit. It's that, and they're let's see if I can get the line right. They're the only prophets that couldn't prophesize flood damage. Something similar to that.
Yeah, it makes sense because how would you get this boat to float? I mean, I guess it made sense to them to write it down in a book 2,000, 2,500 years ago, but today you could just instantly look up and say, that wouldn't work. And the stories about all the animals and everything, you would accept that as a child if somebody told you that, somebody that you trust and that you believe has greater knowledge than you told you that. Well, hey, I guess they did have all these animals on there. But as an adult, say, how is that really feasible to have thousands of animals in a boat with 8 people taking care of them, and they're all supposed to live? And
it's a nursery rhyme. Like the reason we have this problem is because children imprint on their parents, and it's just we really, at a certain age, we just take everything that they say as factually true, and a giant portion of what your parents tell you is correct. And so it seems to be corresponding with reality. It's, not till your teenage years that those you start to, I think, by experiencing some of the real world, you start to see, well, maybe, well, they told me, my parents told me that this was the one true religion, but Bobby across the street, he's a different religion. And I think you start to break out of that a little bit because you start to get contacts. But these types of stories, like going past giants, Noah's Ark is believed by a giant portion of the United States.
It is, yeah.
That
I'd
is
say
that.
probably 40%, at least probably take it literally.
And it is like taking to me, and it constantly insults them, like I'm insulting them on a personal level. But is it not like, it's like Dr. Seuss? It is like they have taken a Dr. Seuss story literally, and they miss any point. By taking it literally, you miss any point that it
Well,
could have. I disagree with the story, but
you've tapped into one of my favorite ways of trolling YouTube Christians is to, when they're in their streams, like Otangelo especially, I do this with Otangelo, and I'll just start quoting Dr. Seuss when he's going on one of his nonsensical rants because it makes more sense than anything he's saying. So I'll just take Cat in the Hat quotes and throw them in there. Eventually he'll realize what's going on, but yeah, I guess when I have nothing else better to do, I'll troll Otangelo in one of his streams. But
it makes as much sense.
But yeah, even further than that, you know, yeah, obviously I grew up in this. You probably didn't grow up in this, but when I was a child, my parents told me that every year on December 25th, a portly guy would come down the chimney with a bag full of presents, and then I would wake up and they would be under the tree. It would be evidence. It makes sense. Your parents are telling you this. Why would it not be?
And
But
they've
then,
always been right before, right? They're right so many
right?
times.
Why would they lie to you about that? If they're saying it must be that Santa's coming down the chimney and bringing presents, I wake up, there's presents there. Oh, this is what I asked him for. I told him I want this item, and now I have this item under the tree. It works, right? And but of course, as kids grow older, and then they start to see that things don't really add up. They don't really make sense. There's no real magic in the world. We don't see magic things like that happening. And by the way, how's this one guy do this in one day? You start to see all these inconsistencies and everything add up, and then you realize that the hypothesis of Santa being real is probably not comporting to reality anymore.
Well,
And you
yeah.
have a choice. You can either accept that and move on, or you can come up with rescuing devices. Well, maybe Santa uses time dilation to get around the time, and he's moving so fast that time goes so slow for him that he can do all that in one day. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say, and then maybe you stay up late one night because you're waiting for Santa to come home. I hear this is a common story, but then, as you're waiting for the red suit, you see, your mom or someone putting presents under the tree, and you go, well, it can't be mom, or maybe mom is putting Santa Claus's presents for Santa, and so you start to think, and then after a while you start to put two to two together, and you go, it's not real. Or I've heard another common story, you're the only kid on the bus anymore that believes in Santa, and so someone comes over and goes, oh, you really believe in Santa?
Yeah, I guess there are some kids who out other kids and tell them that. I don't know. I don't know what the actual age is where kids typically start to come to the conclusion. I guess I would say I was about 8, maybe right about 8 years old when I started to doubt it. And after that, I mean, I guess some a little sooner, some a little after, but you reach a conclusion where this really doesn't make sense anymore. But the religious people, they come across those same things, but they, instead of accepting that, they just keep making up rescuing devices, keep coming up with excuses to justify their belief.
Yeah. And I have a weird situation. This is the most American thing that could happen. But so, was raised secular Jews, conservative synagogue, but and my mom has always been this way. She's always been like adamant that we celebrate Hanukkah, even though I don't really care. But at a certain point, I think, or like around middle school, she started getting very self-conscious, and so we started celebrating Hanukkah and Christmas. And so I got presents. They were generally shittier presents on Hanukkah, I think. I think she was doing that purposely because there was 8 days. So like it ended up being the stocking stuffers. And then on Christmas, she gave me a gift, even though I didn't really know that it was on the 25th. And I used to be proud that I didn't know, but now it's too much knowledge on the subject. But and about, I would say, middle to high school, at a certain, I was like, hey, it's the 25th, isn't it? Christmas and Santa Claus. They're like, you don't believe in that shit. Don't start with us. I was like, okay. I got to a certain age of just like I think my mom was just really self-conscious that I wanted to fit in. They never really tried to get me to believe, but I then got to a certain age, and they're like, "Yeah, this is money, so no, we know you. We know you know."
I've seen mixed families where my son's mother, she's Jewish, and when we were still together, she actually liked the idea of doing Christmas with our son because she just thought it would be cool, to do, because she had worked with kids before, so the kids that weren't Jewish, so she was aware of like the Christmas, but she never actually did it for herself. So
Yeah.
we would do both. I mean, she's Jewish, so obviously she's going to want to do certain Hanukkah things with our son, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And we went over to my parents for Christmas, and there were she had a friend who was Jewish, and her husband was Catholic. So they did both. They did celebrated Hanukkah. They would do like the little stocking stuffers because it's 8 days. You can't give really nice gifts 8 days, and they're not, made out of that kind of money. But then they would do Christmas with the family. So, it's fun, and you could even do it without belief in it, and that's why I think there's a lot of atheists out there who still celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah if they're from a Jewish family.
Yeah, because it's cultural, and there are so many Jews in this country that, I mean, in fact, I don't want to say the majority, but at least half that are just cultural or secular Jews. There are so many that it's such a weird thing that I get so much strife for the ex-Jew thing, the label, because
that really triggered Smokey. He hated that. That boiled his blood.
Well, it's funny that, and which is interesting. I have a joke for that, and Smokey actually falls outside my joke. But there's 3 people in the world who care who's a Jew, a Muslim, and a National Socialist. It's the only 3 people who care who's. I had a Muslim friend who actually was excited that I had a Jewish background. So that was all at work one time. I swear, he just really wanted to bond because he was like, "If we are friends, peace in the Middle East could happen." I swear that was his mantra. But yeah, it doesn't and then I normally say the Christians don't normally care, but that really did seem to bother him. Some of the Christians do have this link.
Well, I think
with
he
Judaism.
has a Jewish background because I've heard
Oh,
him.
really?
That. Yeah, I think I don't know if his family or maybe like his roots are. Obviously, I think he's been Christian his whole life, but I think he might have Jewish ancestry, so I think he takes it personally like that.
And, a lot of people, we are insulting their truly held beliefs. It's just...
I try to do it in a non-insulting way. I disagree with it, but I mean, I try not to come across as saying they're idiots or they're dumb or they're morons for believing it. Well, I think that may be true to a certain extent, but that's not how I present the case,
Exactly. I think I said this last time. If we were to ever even come off like that, we would immediately be assholes, which is an obvious assholes because no one doesn't follow one from the other. But it just does annoy me sometimes that is one of their main if you don't you understand, James, if you just understood, if you just had the comprehension to understand the Bible, you would be a Christian.
And the thing is, like, I was a Christian for so long, so I can go on his streams and listen to them have a biblical debate, and I can chime in on that, and I might have a view. It doesn't mean I think it's real. It's kind of just like if someone said, like, who do you think is your favorite? Who's your favorite Star Trek captain? You could
Yeah.
have an opinion about that. They're not real. Captain Picard isn't real, but he's obviously, if he was real, he would be a much better captain than Janeway or
Well,
somebody
that's
like
the
that.
thing. That's funny. That it goes back to it only makes sense, these type of worlds and universes, if you accept the canon. So like once you accept that we're talking about Star Trek, you can pick your favorite captain. And but once you go out of that and you say, well, they're not real. But Christians so often are like, well, it's not fair. You're not putting on your Christian hat. You're not taking our canon as true. But it's not like we're not arguing over like which is our favorite prophet in the Bible. We're arguing that they're not real, which is a different argument from arguing that Star Trek is not real.
It is, yeah, because we all accept that it's not real. It's just when you operate in that universe, some people enjoy it. It's entertainment, you know.
Exactly.
Like
In fact, I enjoy it
uh,
more when it's not. And I'm sorry. This is a common. It's just because I get so excited, but then I try and realize I'm cutting people off, and I
no,
try and
not at all.
stop myself.
No, you're a gracious host, Amy.
Oh, thank you. I, I, I'm trying to think once again if this is the correct use of the term ironic, but I either ironic or coincidentally really like fantasy the moment that people don't take and sci-fi and all that. As soon as it's not taken literally. So like I am a legitimate fan of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones,
Right.
and because I believe they have good stories. I believe when you write fiction, um, the whole point is you can get your modern day ideas across because you're going into places that you couldn't go into in real life. Like you could talk about slavery while there's dragons. And so people are interested in it because there's dragons, but then you can get your point across, which is slavery's bad or whatever the subtext of your thing is. And so I love the show Supernatural. It has supernatural in the title. And yet it's the taking it literal. The taking it literal is where everything becomes sour.
And that's why, like, there are legitimately interesting stories in the Bible. There are, as a work of literature, it does have some redeeming qualities. No one would debate that. I mean, no one would deny that. I don't think there's some bad parts to it, but there are some legitimately interesting stories in there, and there are interesting characters and whatnot. It's just when you extrapolate it to mean that they're actually real and it's all true that you run into some issues.
Exactly. You either lose the meaning or you make it a horror story.
Because what was it? Smokey. He was playing a Jesse Lee Peterson clip where Jesse Lee Peterson was basically saying that if you become a Christian, then you automatically stop sinning, and that because sinning is of the devil, and if you have God in your heart, you won't sin, which is a pretty silly notion, even from the Christian standpoint, because I quoted the story from Luke 18, which basically tells the parable Jesus speaking, of him seeing a Pharisee go into the temple and pray to God and saying, "Thank God that you made me a good person and that I'm not, you know, I'm not a liar, adulterer, a thief like this publican over here, like this other guy. So thank you. I fast, I give tithes, I do everything I'm supposed to do." And then the publican goes into the temple and is ashamed and just begs God for mercy, like God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus said that the publican left the temple justified because he threw himself on the mercy of God as opposed to relying on his own good deeds to justify himself, like the Pharisee. And it's a good story. It makes sense. It's not actually true, but within the concept of within the world of Christianity, it still works.
Yeah, you can still take a lesson, but it doesn't. You can still gain lessons from stories that did not happen. In fact, I would say that is the main, most powerful, highest selling stories in our culture right now.
No, absolutely. You can glean important ideas and concepts from works of fiction. We see it all the time in the movies and the TV that you all you see things happen and concepts that would probably be better if they were not actually played out.
And also, just going to bring up, because we're coming on the 2 hour mark and it's also 3 a.m.
Oh wow.
So I figured
Oh,
this will
Tony. Well,
be
thanks for
the.
sticking around this long, Tony. I'm glad somebody is enjoying it.
Yeah, it actually was we had some good discussion and chat, which makes me excited because I feel like we should keep on doing this.
Oh yeah, I'm down for this. Like I said, if you can even invite if other people want to come on, we can do our spiel, and then if somebody else wants to come on, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Like true open mic, even let people who disagree come in.
Exactly. I am good on, I believe, moderating, and because I like people speaking their mind. And yeah, I was gonna say something. I don't really know. I know modern day debate generally says no hate speech, but I generally let them hate speech me because I know that I'm winning. No, I shouldn't say winning. I hate that mentality
Well,
that
if
they're
it's your
not.
channel and it doesn't
Yeah.
bother you and you want to let them go with it, okay. I get from modern day debate perspective, a lot of people would be offended by that. So, and they want to monetize the channel and whatnot, so they do have to keep some level of decorum. But
Indeed. I would like to eventually monetize this channel.
that would be nice, right? And make a little bit of
Exactly.
make a few dollars of it. Well, um, yeah. Hopefully, when they redo the Dillahunty debate, we can figure
Indeed.
do
I
an
was
after show for that. I was going to ask James to plug the after show a little bit, just post the link and mention it if he could. But
And so I guess I'll ask. I guess it's not awkward to run an atheist and a theist one. I was going to plug it. I saw your email and then I was like, what's it called? Maddox, he advertises really well. Let me tell you, advertising works.
oh,
Um
he'll do like $5 super
e-
chats for his after show.
exactly. And so do you think it's not, I guess it's not awkward because there is a different enough vibe to, I think, an atheist and a theist after show.
What do you mean? Having
Well,
two
just
after
having
shows,
two.
or?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, no, there's multiple after shows for some debates I've seen. Um, yeah, like the Dapper Dino debate where they were debating Conspiracy Castle. They had two after
Yeah.
shows. They eventually merged at one point, but um,
He's an interesting guy. It's funny.
Conspiracy Castle.
He's so much like Alex Jones that it almost feels like a parody. Like
Did
it's
did you have
hard
you
to
seen his
believe
Inside
him.
Edition clip that he has on his channel? He
I
went on
have
it like a
not.
dating. He went on Inside Edition, did like a thing for like a dating thing he did from like 2010. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Look that up next time you
Okay.
get a chance, I did send you an email for. I
I
thought I sent you a link to the Smoky one, so you can see how much like Ali G he looks like.
okay. I'll take a look. It's funny. I really like Sacha Baron Cohen. Sacha Baron Cohen actually looks cute when he's normal, but he does all these funny characters that look absolutely ridiculous.
He looks like just a regular guy, but yeah, comedically he's a genius. I mean, he's his Borat character is legendary, and then I even liked his Bruno movie. I thought that one was hilarious too.
I
Did you
like
ever?
the. I didn't see the movie, but I've seen the Bruno character enough to know it's funny.
Oh, it's hilarious. You should, if you ever have like a couple hours free, watch the movie. If you like that kind of humor, you'll die.
I do. I like that. I actually wished we made. I like that kind of stuff, and I wish they made more. This is gonna sound very Jewy, but I wish they made more like Mel Brooks like comedy, or even Monty Python stuff. Just
Yeah, that like slapstick kind of comedy.
yeah, where it's almost geeky humor.
Well, I mean, my favorite movie, one of my favorite trilogies is the Pink Panther movies from the 70s, 60s and 70s. You ever seen any of those?
I have. That's
The
with
Peter Sellers?
Oh, Peter. Well, who was the other guy that was known for Pink Panther? The comedian. Who am I thinking of?
Um,
Um,
well, Steve Martin did a couple
Steve
movies in
Martin.
the 90s,
Yes, I'm thinking of Steve
which
Martin.
were, I'll be kind, they were okay, but they were nothing like the original Pink Panther movies from, the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, they're comedic classics. And my other guilty pleasure is the Police Academy series from the 80s, which
I have seen the Police Academy. My brother probably loves them because he's a cop.
I love that kind of slapstick humor, either that or dry humor. And
Yeah,
I do have
I
a very
agree.
dry sense of humor. But yeah, if you want to get together sometime next week, you want to have anything to talk about, let
Sure,
me
maybe
know.
I'll pick a subject, and it helps to have someone. This is great because we can shoot ideas off each other.
Yeah, great. Yeah, shoot me an email. Let me know if we'll see when James reschedules the Dill Hunty debate. Hopefully, that won't be too far along.
Yeah, because I admit I like Matt. I think he's a good debater. A lot of people give him shit because they say, that he's angry or stuff like that. But I honestly think that's what most people, the people that like him, I think that's what they like the most.
He's fiery,
He's fiery.
because I mean he gets these theists making the same bullshit, stupid arguments over and over and over again, like broken records. After a while, you just want somebody to tell him to shut the hell up.
He also
Yeah.
responds. Like I've seen him respond to people. It's just I think he gets to the point where he's like, okay, a dozen different people or dozen different theists are trying to send gotchas at me at once, and it's like, how many gotchas can I answer? And then when I only answer 11, the 12th guy is now screaming that I ran away from him, even though
And he's batting them down left and right. Like he's just they're throwing these. He's just swatting them away like they're like flies. They're just annoyances to him.
Yeah.
I've called him a human iron chariot before. I think that's what I called him last
Right.
time. I sent a super chat in. I said, Matt Dillahunty, he's a human destroyer of God.
I think he's the closest one that we get to hitch slaps, and I
Hitchens, yeah.
yeah, it's like a hitch slap kind of thing where like the person almost feels sorry for the question they ask. Like they're like, "Oh, you're right. Now that I think about it, it's extremely obvious, and I'm sorry that I tried to defend slavery."
Yeah, him and Aaron Ra. I like Aaron Ra too.
I
but
like Aaron too.
They're Aaron. Sometimes
Aaron,
I get
I'm
into the
sorry.
trap of calling him Aaron.
Well,
Aaron.
I'll be honest. I'm unique in that I'm an elegant rhetoricist, but if you've ever seen me like a paper that I've written, it's just all red squiggle lines. It's just like the half of the paper is just things that I can't spell, and then learning to pronounce it is then another journey.
it amazes me, like, when I write something out, to see how many things are like misspelled. I'm like, damn it, I'm not that big of an idiot. But or
There's
like when you
sometimes I
end
don't
up
turn it
using
on.
Google as your spell checker.
Yeah, there's sometimes I don't have it on to where I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And I'm like, oh no, spell checker
Then you
wasn't
turn it on,
Yeah,
and like half the page is red.
exactly.
But yeah, Aaron Ra, Matt Dillahunty, they're great.
So I'll tie it up.
Yep.
So tonight we discuss why the debate was really is or is not reasons for a god. I think we have just went over a good long while of why we not only see, I would say, good evidence, but why they almost bring us piles of shit.
We are not impressed with the evidence they bring us. It is not. We're not impressed, and we would be able to be impressed if they had good evidence, but well, they don't.
But they don't. But until then, we'll keep on searching. James, it was fun having a
Absolutely,
conversation
Amy.
with you.
Have a good night, Amy. We'll see you next time.
Hi.